many things they can do on these nights, and we always appreciate when you can come out and participate in important forums like this. I do see some new faces, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jean Dupont, I'm the town planner, and happy to have you here with us this evening. With us this evening are April Griffin, our housing coordinator, and Janae Lacey, our assistant to the planning department, and some members of our Affordable Housing Trust, including Ed Goodwin, Chair Diane Trapasso, Member Wally Hersey, and Michael Caplett. It's our pleasure this evening to have with us Karen Sonneborn. Karen is a housing consultant, and it's the second time we've been able to work with Karen on a project. And Karen was educated at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, I believe it was, and she's been involved in affordable housing initiatives for over 35 years. The past 20 years, Karen has focused really on Massachusetts communities, and she's prepared over 70 housing production plans for communities, as well as helping with the implementation of those plans. So we feel really lucky that we were able to get Karen to work with us. She brings with us a wealth of knowledge and a lot of innovative ideas. She helped us work on our buy-down program, which we just implemented, and our campaign assistance program, and a few other things that we did last year. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Karen. She's going to have a presentation. We will have some activities. We'll get into breakout groups. I know when I go to conferences, sometimes that's my least favorite thing to do, but we hope to really get some valuable input from all of you. And then we'll come back together as a group, and we'll hear from all of the individual groups, and you will get a chance to vote on what you think the priorities should be for this plan. So again, thank you all for coming, and turn it over to Karen.
Thanks, Jean. May I say it's my pleasure and privilege to be working with you folks. It's a very impressive group from the housing department, planning department. I am going to try to just focus on the key takeaways from the first sections of this housing production plan. Generally, that's what's called a housing needs assessment, which is a required part of the whole plan that we're putting together. What I'm going to try to go through expeditiously, so let's kind of hold questions or comments until the end. Also, we're really here to listen to you. So the breakout sessions where all of you weigh in on housing issues is really the primary goal of this evening and agenda item. So without that, next slide. So the purpose of this housing production plan, one is to update the plan that was done in 2020, covered up to 2024. These are 5-year plans. And so, and I'll get to what housing production plan is just shortly. Obtain updated information on demographic, economic, and housing characteristics and trends. Get a better understanding of the current housing market dynamic, and I think everybody's aware how the market dynamic is really escalating as far as prices. Identify strategies to address identified needs and goals that were identified in this housing needs assessment. Create a roadmap for housing initiatives over the next 5 years. And gain access to housing production plan safe harbor provisions while getting closer to the state 10% affordability threshold under Chapter 40B, which state legislation that basically requires that towns should promote up to 10% of the year-round housing stock as affordable per the guidelines and requirements of the state and what that means to be affordable. And so this leads right into what our housing production plans. So next slide. Housing production plans are actually regulations that were a subset of Chapter 40B regs, meant to give more control over housing to localities, such that if you prepare a plan that meets all the state's, required sections and information, you get approval of that plan, and then you actually produce housing, which is the equivalent of 1/2 of 1% per year, which is equivalent of 20 units for Sturbridge, then you could get what's referred to as safe harbor, what's technically called certification, for a period of a year. If you actually produce 1% of the year-round housing stock, you get a 2-year safe harbor or certification. That means that developers are not able to, the zoning board of appeal can deny what it considers inappropriate comprehensive permit applications without the developer's ability to appeal those decisions. And basically, Chapter 40B allows developers to override local zoning if the project meets certain requirements. So this is just a very basic slide on what is affordable housing. There's a HUD definition that's been braced in some ways by the state that says if you are spending more than 30% of your income on housing costs, whether it's for rental or home ownership, you're living in housing that's not affordable. The state under Chapter 40B gets more specific. Basically says that in order for the unit to count towards those housing production requirements or that 10% affordability goal, it has to meet a number of requirements. One, it has to be subsidized, and that's either directly subsidized by some public entity or it's approved by a state subsidizing agency. It has to be deed restricted, and we're talking about in perpetuity unless there's a real justification, circumstances warrant a shorter term. The units have to be affirmatively marketed such that those folks in the community and out of the community get some notification about the availability of a unit and the ability to apply. And there's different ways of dealing with applicants. One thing, even a 40B project, at least 70% of the units have to be reserved initially for those who have a connection to the community. Either they live or they work in Sturbridge, for example. And they have to be available for households with incomes at or below 80% of area median income. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. And the units have to be permanent. So they cannot, so that's why, certain kinds of voucher programs, unless the voucher is attached to a particular unit in the project, they cannot be counted SHI. And also, kind of manufactured units have also been declared by in certain circumstances, modular units have been declared to be not permanent. So of the 4,020 year-round housing units, 220 units or 5.47% are included in the subsidized housing inventory. That state-defined list where those units meet all those requirements. This just shows kind of the breakdown of income limits that HUD establishes every year, adjusted by household size. And they range from like 30% of area median income, which is meant to be extremely low income, 50% of area median income, which is called very low income, and then 80% of area median income, which is the cap for 40B. The 2025 guidelines for 80% is $89,000 $800 for a household of 3, for example. I should say that had just a few days ago released the 2026 income guidelines. And they went up a fair amount. So from 89.8 for a household of 3 at the 80% AMI limit to $94,350. Next slide. So these are the housing goals that were included in the, and they're not in the last housing production plan. These are not the annual housing production goals related to 20 units. These are just general kind of aspirational goals, strategic goals that include the last HPP. And I'll read through them briefly. But part of the discussion tonight is for you to weigh in and decide, let us know if there are other goals that we should be thinking about and adding to the list. One is to build local capacity and advocacy efforts to achieve housing production goals, to preserve and maintain existing affordable housing in Sturbridge, to enable a greater diversity of housing choices through regulatory action, to leverage resources to advance housing production and programs, and then to provide housing opportunities and associated services to support diverse populations. So just kind of, once again, kind of key findings from the housing needs assessments on demographic trends. And the chart on the right shows the steady increasing population growth of the town. Was in 2020, 9,867, and then projected to increase to 12,092 residents in 2040 based on University of Massachusetts Donahue Institute projections. So we're talking about continued growth. Increase in minority residents, doubling between 2010 and 2023 to include 9.3% of all residents. Significant gains in middle-aged and older residents with declines in children, and also some decreases in smaller households and those living alone. Let's do the next slide, Janae. This shows the change in age distribution from the census in 2000, 2010, and 2023, going from, the youngest age group of under 5, I think then it's 5 to 19, 20 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 64, and 65 to 84, getting older to 85 plus. And you kind of see the trajectory of, in the older age groups, the number is increasing substantially. And just as an example, for those under 20, they were 27% of the population in 2000, and they have gone down to 24% by the 2023 census figures. Those 65 and older were 13% of the population in 2000, went up to 19.4 and then to 25% in 2023. Well, that's actually, it was 19% in 2023 to 25% based on projections. Continuing aging of the baby boomers. And then next slide. Major economic trends, relatively high incomes. The median household income in 2023 was $129,606. And this is up from 71,000 some odd change in 2010. Just to give you some comparisons, the county median was 94,000. The state was almost 100,000, so well above those locations. 43% of households earned more than $150,000, and you see the big spike at the end. That's the group of households who were earning more than $150,000. You notice the other kind of income cohorts were going down. Almost 7% of households still earned less than $25,000, and many are probably struggling to remain in the community. Kind of growing losses of middle class or missing middle households, those kind of in the middle range are going down. Median income was $54,000 for renters and almost $150,000 for homeowners. The state's labor data shows that the average weekly wage for those who actually have jobs in Sturbridge was $1,051, which translates into an annual salary of $55,000, assuming full-time, year-round work, which is 42% of the median household income for residents. Kind of points to a situation that many who have jobs in Sturbridge can't likely afford to live in Sturbridge if they'd like to. And another issue is that about 11% of residents claim some type of disability, and it's likely that with the aging of the population that the disability levels will increase somewhat.
Karen, can I just interrupt you while you're on this slide? Where did those figures come from?
They come from the census, U.S. Census. Most of these figures are U.S. Census unless I mention something else. Finally, we get to housing, and we're looking at housing growth and occupancy trends. 47% of units were built before 1980. It's reflective of the history of this community. There was a real surge in housing growth between 2000 and 2009. Still, 30% increase in housing units between 2010 and 2023, with a gain of 1,088 owner units and actual loss of 123 rental units. As we're looking for greater housing diversity, this is not a great signal. Owner occupancy, it's at 86%. 80% of the units are in single-family dwellings, and really low vacancy rates at 3.5% for home ownership and 0% for rentals. Any rate below 5% is considered to reflect very tight market conditions, but 0 shows really it's almost not even counting normal turnover. Housing costs. So the median single-family house price was $540,000 in 2025. And based on a number of assumptions that required an income of about $134,000. I just checked this afternoon on these median income levels. These are from the Warren Group, Banker and Tradesman, based on actual sales. And as of March, the median single-family house price had gone up to $569,500. With 3 months, it's not sure that sample size is, sufficient to really do that, but it does kind of point to continuing increases in housing values. The median condo was $360,000, which required an income of about $104,250. And this is based on folks spending at the 30% of area median and no more than 30% of their income on housing costs. So that was one of the assumptions here. So looking at a typical rent for a 2-bedroom unit, if you can find one, is about $2,500, and we require income of about $111,000, which is much higher, almost really twice the median renter household income of $54,000. Affordability gap of $239,400 for a 3-person household earning at that 80% AMI limit, based on the difference between the median priced home $540,000, and a household at this income level can afford are $300,600. Now, with the median increasing, we're talking about continued increases in the affordability gap as well. 24% of households had cost burdens in that they were spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. And 12.5% had severe cost burdens because they were spending more than half their income on housing. And the gap increases to 58% and 28%, respectively, for households earning at or below 80% AMI. So prices increasing, affordability gaps increase, and cost burdens increase. This chart just shows the change in median incomes compared to the change in the median home prices for 2010 and 2023, which visually you can see the widening affordability gap. If that top line, which are the median house prices, continues to $540K, you kind of see it keeps getting wider. Housing dynamic. These bullets basically kind of tell a story about how some of this, how some of the market costs and trends are happening. So one is the migration of new residents from eastern and southern areas with higher incomes to afford rising housing prices translates into greater housing demand, slower housing production. This is kind of like economics 101, and the imbalance between supply and demand drives up prices. Rising housing prices leads to wider affordability gaps and increasing cost burdens, which we've shown. Increasing value of land in tandem with zoning makes high-priced single-family home development the highest and best use. Greater diversity of housing stock to address wide community needs is reliant on greater density and economies of scale. Lower income residents, including many longer-term residents, are struggling to remain in the community. Older residents on fixed incomes remain in their homes with little opportunity to downsize in the community. And starter housing is no longer being produced without subsidies. So distilling all this information, the basic kind of priority housing development need is to continue to focus on rental housing. And that means that you could target the needs of the most financially vulnerable residents, as some financing for affordable housing can get at that 30% and 50% AMI tiers. Promote greater housing diversity, making up for some of the loss of rental units. Leverage local investments, as almost all state and federal subsidies are directed to rentals. Provide opportunities for mixed income housing, including financing for the lower income tiers. Provide support for greater numbers of residents over time as rentals turn over more frequently. And enhance the ability to qualify households for housing subsidies given state asset limit requirements. So long-term homeowners, for example, who have really seen their values of their houses go up significantly, probably not qualify for affordable housing because of financial assets. All units in 40B rental developments qualify for inclusion on that subsidized housing inventory towards that 10% goal and housing production goals, while in ownership units, only the actual affordable units can count. State requirements, at least 25% of the units have to be affordable to those earning at the 80% AMI limit, or 20% have to be affordable to those earning at the 50% AMI limit. And I add here, we have a 0% vacancy rate for rental housing. But the plan recognizes that some new homeownership units are also a community priority. to provide starter housing for families who are shut out of the current housing market, potential units for those with incomes in the 80% to 100% range, still eligible for CPA assistance, but still priced out of the local housing market. Offer more affordable housing alternatives to empty nesters who want to downsize. Lend greater stability to neighborhoods as owners are perceived as more rooted with less turnover. Enable children who are raised in the community to return and raise their own families in Sturbridge. Provide a preferred housing option for municipal employees and other local workers. Offer some limited buildup of equity. Only 10% of SHI units current SHI units involve homeownership. But development must rely on internal subsidies and/or CPA to fill those high affordability gaps. There's less financing or gap fillers available for homeownership than rental housing. The new Affordable Homes Act is meant to kind of increase some of the programs for homeownership as well as for those earning above 80% AMI level. We'll see how accessible those programs actually become. Targeted housing needs. Another need was to include some accommodations for special needs populations based on the following indicators of need. 1,078 residents claimed a disability, representing about 11% of the population. Limited inventory of barrier-free units, growing senior population, barriers to aging in place, no assisted living options in Sturbridge, and SHI includes 32 units in group facilities. However, this is insufficient to meet the need. Also, the plan acknowledges there needs to be some resources for improving housing conditions for qualifying households. Almost half the housing stock was built prior to 1980, which raises some concerns about the lead paint hazards for young children. Septic issues are still an issue for major parts of town, and health and safety improvements for an aging population should be also under some consideration. Also, I just mentioned that because of the historic character and of the community and its historic housing, preservation becomes an important piece too. So next step, based on the housing needs assessment, based on the comments we get tonight, based on the survey, based on interviews, housing trust meetings, staff meetings, et cetera, we're going to draft the next sections of the housing plan to relate specifically to those annual housing production goals over 5 years, and most importantly, on the group of strategies that are meant to be priorities in the next 5 years to better promote housing diversity and affordability. We'll then conduct another opportunity for residents, local leaders, to learn about the full draft housing production plan. And then we'll need approvals from both the planning board and the select board in order to submit the plan to the state. And that's pretty much, let me just, okay. Let me just run through these, because these are, while you're here and start thinking, these are some of the questions that we're going to be asking in the group, breakout groups, just to get your thoughts on housing future in Sturbridge. Like, what does affordable housing mean to you? What is the town's greatest challenge related to preserving and producing housing affordability and diversity? What is the appropriate aspirational housing goal to strive for in the years ahead? That slide that we had on housing goals that were included in the last plan. And importantly, what are the best locations for new housing development? And what are the most important housing actions or strategies for the town to implement to address housing needs? And with that, I'll open this up to a brief session with any questions or comments before we split up into the breakout groups. Any questions? Yeah.
You need to use the microphones.
Oh, yeah, you have to come up to the microphone.
Because we're being recorded and televised.
Thank you for the
State
presentation.
your name, too.
Sure, John Weaver, Karen Road in Sturbridge. Just curious, based on the data you presented, if there's so much demand and so much income, why more housing isn't being produced in Sturbridge to meet that demand if it's out there?
Well, there are a number of challenges to producing affordable housing. You know, one is, zoning, infrastructure, environmental issues. A lot of the, available land might have, issues related to infrastructure, environment, et cetera. And resources are still an issue. It's hard for developers to get site control and have the density or economies of scale to make housing work in a lot of ways. There's a whole section of the plan that relates specifically to the issues of challenges or constraints to developing housing. Anything else? Okay.
I basically have two questions. The first one, Mike Supernaut, 14 North Lamb Lane. The first question that I have is, you stated that there's well over 1,000 people in the community that have some form of disability, and there's only 32 units on the SHI. Why isn't there a need for supportive housing in Sturbridge?
There is a need for it, and that's why.
I don't know.
Yeah, there is a need, and that's one of the priority needs that we, identify in the plan.
didn't
We
see
need
it
a lot
on-
more, yeah.
But yeah, I would think there's a pretty strong need for some types of, certain types of supportive housing.
That's
in
right,
town.
that's right.
The other question I have is to follow up on the gentleman's comment. The cost of development of housing includes, like you said, the cost of land, and our zoning is pretty much geared towards single-family development on large lots. And has any consideration been given to possibly a need for, especially around our existing villages, to have types of housing like cottages and townhouses, which traditionally before the 1960s was the principal form of housing development?
These are just the kinds of comments that we want to get as part of these roundtable and perspectives. I mean, we will include some regulatory changes, some zoning changes as part of this plan. There were numbers the last go-around, but we really want to, sharpen our pencil and come up with some recommendations that are both pragmatic, but also meaningful. And so these kinds of different housing types and how zoning can support them are certainly kind of issues that we want to hear about tonight from you folks. Thank you.
Ann Bouvier from Breakneck Road, and my question is, and there's no stupid questions, I've been told all my life.
Stupid question.
So my question is what I see a major problem with building in this town is septic systems. And until we solve that issue, how can we put in multiple housing, which I think we need, multiple housing units that are diverse, but where can we put them? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah, I got to say, I've worked in a lot of communities that almost all the houses, lots require septic, and they're figuring it out. There are models out there that, we can add that can ameliorate some of these problems. One project that I came across I was working on a project last year, is that, these pocket neighborhoods, these kind of cottage, bungalow units around a green space. They have the leaching fields as part of the green space. There are ways of working out creatively. There's ways of working out creatively to come up with some solutions.
Okay.
That's not a stupid question. Anything else before we divide you up? Okay, that's great. So we've got to talk about how many groups we were going to have, and maybe you figured it out.
We can have 3 groups or 4. So how many do you want in a group, Karen?
6 to 8 is ideal.
So mix people up, and the first 6 people head to that back room. Start up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to Susan. Or Sarah, excuse me.
We've given you instructions. Maybe, what I should do, before you run off, maybe what I should do is give you just a little bit of a summary of what the process is going to be. So you're going to have a facilitator. You're going to choose a facilitator and record it. The facilitator's job, and it's written out in instructions, is to keep things moving. Because we're on a schedule. Because we want to get through the whole agenda and the topics in the breakout sessions. So the facilitator is also meant to make sure that everybody in the group, in turn, is heard from on a particular question. So keeping things moving, making sure everybody's paid, is heard. Then there's a recorder, and the recorder is important because the recorder is going to keep track of comments. And we have either flip charts and markers, and so it's not please keep the comments like in bullets and record it. Because I'm going to be taking those sheets and I'm going to be using them to come up with a summary for the results of tonight's meeting. The other thing is that the last question, when we're actually coming down with priority actions, each group's going to end up with some priority actions. We're going to be voting on those. So each group will present, the reporter from each group is going to present those priority actions to the whole group, or reconvene as a whole group, and then everybody's going to get a chance to vote on the ones that they are most supportive of. So, and then we're going to be kind of going through and kind of keeping things on track, and if there are any questions that come up. Yeah.
Yeah, can you explain to people what a low impact development is? Because that comes out of the state and that can affect the sort process. Just so they understand.
Low impact, you mean like energy wise? I mean like,
No, you're talking more like stormwater management.
And solar maybe on the roofs or anything like that, so we don't know. Okay, so.
Yeah.
I thought there would be something to do.
It's a little beyond the scope of kind of what we're doing here. We're
Okay.
talking more in generalized tonight, but low impact development really is where you're kind of designing with the ground, so your stormwater management systems are
different
using-
vegetation.
Yeah,
and all
using
that.
swales and things so that you're,
So,
yeah, and so less kind of built up concrete and
Right.
more, kind of designing with nature, kind of,
Right, right.
a lot of people call it.
That's an important part of
Yeah,
the project.
and maybe you have solar for your energy and your, similar cottage, as you talked about the bungalows where you're designing around green, so less impervious, less infrastructure.
Right.
So that you can use the septics in the wells in those instances, so,
That helps.
yeah.
Well, environmental things.
Yeah.
And
I get that in a nutshell for you.
Thank you.
All right, so Mike Caplette is going to go in the back as facilitator with the first 6 of you, and,
who's the recorder?
and so, April, do you want to be the recorder?
Are you gonna be the recorder?
Or do you want to pick a recorder out of, or do you want to grab a recorder out of
Yeah, I'll facilitate, don't we need somebody to facilitate that?
Yeah, you want to
I'll do
facilitate that?
yeah.
Okay. All right, so Mike will facilitate that, and if somebody else from the trust wants to go into that one, I just don't want everybody from the trust in one group. Okay, we can go into that group, and then we'll take, people into this room. Okay.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
It's just not on the priority.
Jimmy Pruitt said, no way.
Their priority.
Can I have your final priority sheet?
That's coming up.
I'd like to know, conspiracy theory, 100 samples, is it 100 they had to get?
Originally, it was around that much. It was 50 in the beginning.
Somebody's sitting in Medford or wherever, they don't want to come out here.
Well, it was.
It's free land, but
And then we're going to do
Because
voting. So each of you will
Okay. Took half the town, gave it to me.
So each of you will get 5 sticky dots. And you click on those actions that you prefer. You can put 5 dots on 5 different actions. It can be on either group, or you can put 5 dots on the action you really, really like, and you can distribute them however you want. We're going to give you 1 red dot. If you choose, and there's a particular action that you are opposed to, you can put that red dot on. So 5 positive stickers with preferred actions, and 1 if you want to use it to identify some opposition. So with that,
Can I ask for clarification?
yeah,
Some of these on the 2 different lists are the same thing.
it always happens.
Okay.
The obvious ones typically kind of stand out.
So if we vote on one and it's
So you don't.
similar to the
I'll
other,
get it.
you'll merge them?
I'll get it.
Okay.
So, you want to do,
No, sure. I hope this is.
Thanks, passing out dots. Did anyone not get dots?
yes.
Does anyone get their dots? Board members get dots?
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
So, I just talked about what.
You just report what you're
Got my hair too.
came up with. And you can elaborate if you want.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
the rules, I wasn't paying
The
attention.
group from the back row,
That is your favorite?
Needs his dot.
I guess it's my favorite, I guess.
Can we please listen to Mike? He's going to report back on their group.
okay, I'm reporting on the group that met in the back room, and the number 1 priority for action would be to create zone changes that would promote affordable housing, obviously. But the second action is that we agreed on was that the town should extend infrastructure, water and sewer in particular, to areas that would be priority areas for residential development and affordable housing type of development. And the third priority was to identify the land that's available, including town-owned land. I think some of that's probably been done, but that's a high priority. We probably wouldn't know where to extend infrastructure until we had identified priorities of where affordable housing development could happen. And the fourth, we only got to 4 priorities. The fourth priority was to diversify the housing, including rehabbing existing housing. So by diversity, I guess what we were talking about were more rental housing, more multifamily development, maybe some cottages and cottage development and townhouses that are more dense development than what we have. And those are the 4 priorities that for action our group discussed.
So you don't want to talk about the other 2 then?
Well, the other 2 kind of went into the the first four.
Okay. Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we identified priority development sites, and then we said we'd include town-owned land in that.
Great. In fact, identifying some town-owned property as a required piece of a housing production plan, unless the town can justify, document, it has no land that it owns that can be included, so that's important. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Ann from this group, and so whichever group that was. So in the zoning, we have the same thing, I just didn't have the word zoning change, but that's what that's for. And then 2 would be identify buildable land, and that could tie into town land, deserted land, you know, that type of thing. So, and then the other thing is to reevaluate the sewer fees to tie in, and because that discourages building in those areas. And then identify some incentive resources, both building and financial. So it doesn't have to just be financial, but it could be some building. And I'm not an expert on that, so I can't explain exactly what. Also, we thought that developing job opportunities by attracting more business would also bring more income to the town and help people who are having some financial difficulties and can't live here because of the affordability aspect. And then also to make the town a little more affordable for the builders, so that they do want to come in, and I think that would tie somewhat in with the incentives, but they do want to come in and build property and hopefully multiple use properties. So.
Good. Great job. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. Jean, you want to say something about, I mean, as we mentioned in the last slide, second to last slide on next steps, I'm going to be incorporating all your comments, and based on the comments as well as some other pieces, put together a draft of the next required sections of the plan, and then we'll have another meeting to present the draft for your comments. And do you want to?
So don't forget to vote before you leave.
Oh, the voting, yes.
And take some cookies on your way out. And again, thank you so much for coming. As I said, we do appreciate you spending your time with us. It was so nice to see some faces that we don't normally see at meetings, so that was great. We really appreciate you coming out. And I expect that our next unveiling of the draft plan will likely be at a planning board meeting, where you'll have the opportunity to come in. We'll have Karen come and unveil the final draft. We will also make that draft available on the website. If you've left your email address and you're not on our email list, you will be getting updates from us. If you didn't leave your email address, please do before you leave. Janae will make sure that you get updates as they become available. We will send you the final draft version of the plan. And there's a lot of other resources on our website. If you haven't visited the housing section of the website, please do. You'll see some of the programs that we've been working on. We hope that you will stay engaged. If this was your first venture out, please continue to visit us and participate in these sessions. It really does make a difference. This is your community, and your participation here really does help shape your community and make it what it is. So thank you again for coming out. Thanks to Karen, all the members of the trust that came out, and of course, April and Janae. We couldn't do what we do in the planning department without the great staff that we have. So thank you all. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Vote. Don't forget to vote.